The Apache woman stood on the train tracks, absolutely still, her dark eyes fixed on something beyond the horizon. Thomas Crawford ran, boots pounding gravel, lungs burning in the Arizona heat. The freight train's whistle screamed around the curve. 10 seconds, maybe less. "Move!" he shouted, but she didn't flinch. This wasn't an accident. She wanted to die. 5 seconds. 4. Thomas dove, his shoulder catching her waist, both of them tumbling into sagebrush as iron and steam thundered past, close enough to tear his shirt. She shoved him off, furious. "Why did you stop me?" In that moment, neither knew they'd just changed everything. That saving her life would cost him everything he knew, the Arizona sun, beat down on the railroad tracks like a hammer on an anvil. 28-year-old Thomas Crawford wiped sweat from his forehead, squinting across the desert landscape. September 1883, and the Southern Pacific Railroad was pushing eastward through Apache territory, connecting Tucson to the New Mexico border. Thomas had been laying track for 3 years, ever since he'd left Missouri, with nothing but debts and a tarnished reputation. The work was brutal, but it paid, and no one asked questions about a man's past out here. "Crawford! Check the coupling on the water car!" Foreman Dutch Henderson shouted. Thomas grabbed his tools and headed toward the supply train. That's when he saw her. An Apache woman stood on the main tracks, maybe 100 yards east, her dark hair loose in the wind. She wasn't moving. Her attention was fixed on something beyond the curve. Then Thomas heard it. The whistle of the eastbound freight. "Hey!" Thomas dropped his tools and started running. "Get off the tracks!" She didn't move. The train whistle screamed again, closer now. He could see the smoke billowing over the ridge, 20 yards. She finally turned, her dark eyes meeting his. She wasn't frozen in fear. She was deliberate. 10 yards. The locomotive burst around the curve. Thomas dove, his shoulder catching her waist, both of them tumbling into the sagebrush. The freight train thundered past, inches away, the engineer's shocked face visible as he applied the brakes too late. Thomas lay in the dirt, his ribs aching. She was breathing hard, her eyes fierce and angry, not grateful. "Why did you do that?" she demanded in perfect English, shoving him off. "You were about to be killed." Thomas sat up. "That was my choice to make." She stood, brushing dust from her clothing. "Not yours, white man." The train had stopped down the tracks, the crew running back. Thomas looked at the woman. She was perhaps 25, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held both intelligence and deep sorrow. "What choice?" he asked. "Dying under a train. Going to join my family," she said quietly. "My husband, my daughter. The cavalry took them 3 months ago. Killed them at our camp near the Gila River." Thomas felt the words like a physical blow. He'd heard about the massacre, drunken soldiers attacking a peaceful Apache camp, 15 dead, including women and children. "I'm sorry," he said. "Your sorrow changes nothing." She turned to leave. "Wait," Thomas offered his canteen. "At least take water." "It's 10 miles to the nearest Apache camp." She hesitated, then accepted, drinking deeply. "I am Nietzsche, of the Chiricahua Apache. Thomas Crawford. I lost my family too. Different circumstances, but death is death." Nietzsche handed back the canteen. "Loss is loss." The train crew arrived, Dutch Henderson's face red with anger. "What happened? You trying to get yourself killed, Injun?" "She stumbled," Thomas lied quickly. "I pulled her clear." "Right. Well, get back to work, Crawford, and you get off railroad property before I call the fort." After Dutch left, Nietzsche looked at Thomas with something that might have been respect. "Why did you lie for me?" "Because everyone deserves to make their own choices," Thomas said. "But maybe there are better choices than that one." "What would you know about my choices?" "I know about wanting to die because living hurts too much." Thomas met her eyes. "I also know that dying doesn't honor the people we lost. Living does." Something shifted in her face. She looked at him for a long moment. "The nearest Apache camp is at San Carlos Reservation," Naiche said finally. "But I won't go there. It's a prison. My aunt's people are in the Chiricahua Mountains, near Fort Bowie, 20 miles north." She glanced at the sun. "I'll never make it before dark. Thomas made a decision that would change everything. I finish at 6. I've got a horse and supplies. I'll take you." They left Tucson as the sun painted the desert gold and crimson. Naiche sat behind him on his mare, her arms loosely around his waist. "Why are you helping me?" she asked as they rode north. "Honest answer? I don't know," Thomas admitted. "Maybe because you're the first person in 3 years who looked at me like I was human. Your people killed my family. Your railroad is ending my entire way of life." "I know," Thomas said quietly. "And I can't change that. But I can help one person reach her family safely." They rode in silence until Naiche pointed to a narrow canyon. "Through there. It's faster." Inside the canyon, darkness fell quickly. Thomas lit a lantern. Naiche slid off the horse, moving to a spring trickling from the rocks. "We should rest here," she said. "The trail becomes dangerous in darkness." Thomas built a small fire. Naiche produced dried meat, offering him some. They ate together, the silence comfortable now. "Tell me about them," Thomas said. "Your family." Naiche was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "My daughter's name was Kiona. She was 7. She could track a rabbit through solid rock," her father said, a sad smile. "My husband Ashki was a skilled hunter, proud, stubborn. He wouldn't leave when the soldiers came. He was right to stay." "Being right doesn't stop bullets." Naiche's voice hardened. "Doesn't protect children." Thomas poked at the fire. "My wife died of cholera. My son, too, back in Missouri 4 years ago. I couldn't save them. Couldn't even afford proper medicine." He swallowed hard. "I blame myself. Drank until I lost everything. The farm, the respect of my neighbors." "But you didn't disappear," Naiche observed. "No, I survived. And somewhere along the way, surviving started feeling like betrayal." Naiche nodded slowly. "Yes. How do we laugh again? How do we feel joy when they can't?" "I don't know," Thomas admitted, "but I think they'd want us to try." Their eyes met across the fire. Two people from impossibly different worlds, connected by grief and the slow, painful process of healing. They reached the Apache camp at dawn. A dozen wiki-ups sat in a hidden valley. Women looked up as they approached, men emerging with rifles, until one older woman cried out and ran toward them. Naiche embraced her aunt, both speaking rapidly in Apache. Thomas stayed mounted, aware of hostile stares from the men. When Naiche turned back, something in her expression made his chest tight. "Thank you, Thomas Crawford," she said formally. "You have honored me." "You're welcome." He started to turn the horse. "Wait!" Naiche approached, her hand touching his boot. "My aunt invites you to eat before you ride back." The meal was awkward but civil. Naiche translated, explaining how he'd saved her life. The men remained suspicious, but the women were curious about the railroad, about white settlements. After eating, Thomas prepared to leave. Naiche walked with him to his horse. "I can't stop thinking about what you said," she admitted, "about surviving being a way to honor them. It's just one man's opinion." "No, it's truth." Naiche looked up at him. "Thomas Crawford, I don't know if our peoples will ever find peace. But I know that you showed me kindness when you had no reason to. You saw me as a person, not an enemy." "You are a person," Thomas said simply, "a remarkable one." Naiche stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his face, a gesture so unexpected, so gentle that Thomas froze. "If the world were different," she whispered, "if our peoples weren't enemies." Thomas caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. "The world is what it is." "Then maybe we make it different." Naiche's eyes were fierce. "Maybe we choose differently." I'm tired of letting fear and hate decide my path. You saved my life, now let me choose how to live it. Thomas pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. This was impossible, dangerous. Society would destroy them for this, but Nietzsche was right. Fear had ruled them both for too long. 6 months later, Thomas stood outside a small adobe house 15 miles from Tucson, watching Nietzsche tend a garden in the early morning light. They'd married in a ceremony recognized by neither Apache tradition nor white law, performed by a sympathetic missionary. The railroad had fired Thomas. Most businesses in Tucson refused to serve them. Nietzsche's own people had split, some supporting her choice, others viewing it as betrayal. But they'd built something. Thomas worked as a freelance surveyor. Nietzsche sold traditional medicines and craftwork to a trader in Benson. It wasn't easy. There were threats, insults, rocks thrown at their windows, but there were also small victories, neighbors who offered quiet support, a doctor who treated Nietzsche with respect, Apache children who came to learn from her. "You're thinking too hard," Nietzsche called, wiping dirt from her hands. "I can see it from here." Thomas smiled, walking to her. "Just remembering a woman standing on train tracks, ready to give up. And a foolish white man who tackled her into the dirt." Nietzsche's eyes sparkled with humor. "Would you do it differently?" Thomas asked. "If you could go back?" Nietzsche considered, her hand resting on his chest. "I would still grieve, still rage at injustice, still fight for my people's survival." She paused. "But I would also know that hate doesn't have to be the only answer. That sometimes the bravest thing is to open your heart to someone from the other side." Thomas kissed her forehead. "The world still wants us to fail. Then we'll disappoint the world," Nietzsche said firmly. "We'll survive, we'll build, we'll show them that love is stronger than their hate." A rider approached, a young Apache man from Nietzsche's aunt's camp. He spoke quickly in Apache. Nietzsche's face grew serious. "What is it?" Thomas asked. "Geronimo has broken from the San Carlos reservation. The cavalry is mobilizing," Nietzsche translated. "My aunt asks if we can shelter some of the children. Keep them safe from the fighting." Thomas looked at their small home, then at Nietzsche. This could get them killed, harboring Apache children during military operations. But that was the point. Not just surviving, but choosing how to live. Choosing to protect the innocent, regardless of consequence. "Tell him yes," Thomas said. "We'll take as many as we can keep safe." Nietzsche's smile was radiant. She spoke rapidly to the messenger, who nodded and rode off. Then she turned to Thomas, taking both his hands. "Do you know what you've just done? The risk?" "I know," Thomas said, "but a wise woman once told me that sometimes you have to choose differently." "That woman sounds very smart," Nietzsche teased. "She is. Beautiful too, stubborn as hell. Good thing you couldn't resist her then." They laughed together, the sound carrying across the desert morning, a sound of hope and defiance. Their path wouldn't be easy. The prejudices of 1883 Arizona wouldn't disappear because one couple chose love over fear, but every journey starts with a single step, and sometimes that step begins with pulling someone from the train tracks, offering water to a stranger, or simply seeing another human being instead of an enemy. The future remained uncertain, dangerous even. But for the first time since he'd left Missouri, Thomas felt truly alive. And Nietzsche, standing beside him, felt the same, not just surviving, but living, building something new on ground that neither culture had claimed. Together, they'd make their own world, one act of defiance, one moment of compassion at a time.